This is Wickett on Wisconsin. My name's Mike Wickett. After 10 years in Milwaukee talking sports, I took a bit of a break, but now I'm back and here to talk about the Packers, the Bucks, the Brewers, and more with you. And now inside the Koss Headphone Studios, this is Wickett on Wisconsin with me, Mike Wickett. Well, it is a special edition of Wickett on Wisconsin because we have had a special circumstance here in the middle of the week. Normally we reserve these for Packers previews, and we'll get to one at some point, but news comes down about the Wisconsin Badgers. Their game against Nebraska has been canceled because of a COVID-19 outbreak inside the locker room. Joining me right now to talk about this real quick, a guy whose day and week have just flipped upside down. You read him at BadgerBlitz.com, on Twitter at the Badger Nation. He is Ben Worgull. Ben, it's strange. A week ago, you and I had a conversation about, well, as long as no COVID outbreaks happen, this game should be, the Badgers should be fine. They wallop Illinois. But, man, a week later, everything is different. Thanks for coming on.
Every time we talk, Mike, we talked about this last week. Every time we talk, something happens that things get canceled and things get messed up. So it's our problem. It's us that is doing this to America.
Yeah, I wonder if, at this point next week, will they cancel the Big Ten basketball season? Will they cancel the Packers season? It all stems from you and I having conversations and trying to, say, everything's fine. Everything's going to be okay.
You think with this immense power, we would do something better with it instead of just ruin people's weekends.
No, we're just here for clicks and downloads. That's all we really want.
Clickbait, my friend. That's all we're here for.
I would rather be talking about Graham Mertz's incredible performance, but that gets completely pushed to the back when we found out the day after or 2 days after that Graham Mertz tested positive for COVID-19. What was that day like for Badger fans and for your site, BadgerBlitz.com?
Well, it was very sobering because you hoped it was a false positive, but then once you heard that Chase Wolf also had tested positive, you knew that the odds of both having a false positive were slim to none. Certainly, you looked at what we saw on Friday, and it was spectacular. I can't imagine or think of another performance in a debut in a starting spot that was as good as Graham Mertz. Maybe Russell Wilson back in 2011, but Wilson had starting experience before. The hype train with Graham Mertz was huge from the time that he committed, from the time he got all those big Power 5 offers to the time he signed. It just kept growing and growing, and he lived up to that. He exceeded that. Now, granted, it was just Illinois. It wasn't like he was playing Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State or some juggernaut Big Ten team. But still, what he did was spectacular. And to lose him in less than 48 hours, I think was very sobering for a lot of fans. And so then you look at, okay, Chase Wolf, very good player in his own right, got some skill set, not probably as good as Mertz, but still he can manage this offense. And then you find out he missed practice and he has COVID. And then you start to go, okay, let me look up my Danny Vandenboom Sky report from a couple years ago out of Kimberly High School. And then we get the word on Wednesday that 6 positive tests among the players, 6 positive tests among the coaches in the last 5 days, including head coach Paul Chryst. And this game this weekend is not going to be played. Just kind of sinks in the reality of the situation. Like when we talked, 9 games in 9 weeks without a hitch seemed very aggressive. And what do you know, in week 2 of the Big Ten, everything's thrown into disarray.
If you, and I'm not specifically citing you on this, Ben, but if you're a football fan, if you're an American watching where this country is at right now, and you're shocked that a COVID outbreak happened in the locker room of the team that plays in the COVID hotspot of the nation, you just haven't been paying attention. And that's why we closed last week talking about what you said. What has Paul Chryst said about a possible COVID outbreak? I know as we're recording this, Chryst hasn't yet met the media, but what can he say?
Not much. We talked to him on Monday, and he refused to comment about individual players having tested positive, about UW's testing procedures. He felt on Monday that the game was going to be played as scheduled. Obviously, a lot has come out in the 48 hours since then that has caused that not to happen. You look at where the state of Wisconsin was on Tuesday, 5,200 new COVID cases, 64 deaths. I mean, this is a very serious issue that is popping up again. This is like the third wave that we are dealing with here as a country. And Wisconsin over the last several weeks has grown into a hotspot. Now, I think it's fair to assume that Mertz was probably already infected with COVID prior to the game on Friday. Now, he tested negative along with everyone else who played, but he probably just had it and wasn't showing symptoms. And then certainly over the weekend, the daily testing says he had COVID, and then the more intense PCR testing confirmed that. And that's where we're at now. So the game's not going to be played this weekend. It'd be interesting to see the status of next weekend's game against Purdue on November 7th. There's a lot of uncertainty here. And now you have to wonder with Illinois as well, do players in Illinois start to have some positive tests pop up because of playing Wisconsin on Friday? This is just kind of the start of what's going to be a very serious issue for the Big Ten to try to figure out.
I did just read a tweet from Lovie Smith. They have 0 positives. Now, we know that Graham Mertz didn't test positive for a couple of days, but Lovie Smith sent out, or the Illinois press put out, that Lovie Smith said no positive tests for the Illini football team, which is a good thing. Now, keep an eye on that, obviously, and we'll see where this goes. And we'll talk more about the rest of the Big Ten in a second. But Purdue is in jeopardy. You mentioned Michigan being in jeopardy. Let's say that the Michigan game can happen. That game can't be played with Graham Mertz, can it, based on the 21-day protocol that the Big Ten has put out?
Well, if I read the Big Ten protocol correctly, the 21-day clock starts from the day one of your first positive test. And he tested positive on Saturday. And you count 21 days because Wisconsin played on a Friday. He would be eligible to come back and practice the day before the Michigan game. That would be his 21st day, or Saturday, one of the two. So in theory, he would be able to play against Michigan, but he would play with no practice time on the field. That seems a little aggressive. Now, wouldn't put it completely past Wisconsin. If Wisconsin really wants him to play, they'll find a way for him to get ready and be on the field. But it all depends on who else is positive. And we don't know. We know that Graham Mertz is the only one through source reporting that has 2 positive tests and is going to be unavailable for 21 days. We don't know if there's offensive linemen. We don't know if they're running backs. We don't know corners. We don't know position groups. We don't know any of that because Wisconsin has been unwilling to share their numbers, citing medical privacy. The Big Ten does not have a minimum number of players per position group that have to be ready in order for a game to go on. They just have the percentages, the rolling percentages over a 7-day period. And certainly with the tests that popped up here over the last 5 days, like I said, 6 players, one would assume that's probably going to go up here in the next couple of days. Who knows what kind of team Wisconsin's going to have available to them next week or in 3 weeks over this course of this mandatory 21-day no practice, no game protocol.
It wouldn't surprise me if, Wisconsin wasn't the only school in the Big Ten, considering where the hot spots are in the country. It's the Midwest. It's Big Ten country. It's Indiana. It's Ohio. It's Michigan. It's Wisconsin. It's Iowa. Do you think we're going to see more positive tests for some of these guys, some of these big-time players at some of these schools?
I'd be shocked if we didn't, just because of what you mentioned. I think I saw in the news that cases are spiking in 42 of the 50 states, and most of those states are in Big Ten country. So this is something that people need to take seriously if they haven't. Got to wear a mask, got to social distance. And I'm not saying Wisconsin players didn't do that, but these players have talked all offseason about being cautious, just taking the extra precautions because they knew they had 0 margin for error, trying to play 9 games in 9 weeks. And if they did indeed do that, and still caught the virus, that this is just kind of that warning sign to the rest of college football. It's impossible to bubble in college football. There's too many players. There's too many personnel. It doesn't work like it did for the NBA and the NHL, and to a degree, the MLB and the playoffs for the most part. This is just something that teams are dealing with. We've seen it in the NFL, the games being rescheduled. I heard today about someone on the Houston Texans testing positive, so that brings in question with the Packers on Sunday. So many things going on in the world with especially with football. I'd be shocked if this is the only Big Ten game that is canceled during the course of this 9-game season.
Everybody's going to speculate, and I don't know if there's going to be pictures that pop up of Graham Mertz out at a party or at a bonfire or whatever. Does anyone have any idea where it came from, or is it just him living in Wisconsin?
I think it's the latter. I don't think that they got it on Friday. Like I said, I think they had to have had the virus previous to the Illinois game and just weren't showing symptoms, that the daily antigen tests that they take didn't show up anything. And then on Saturday after the game, that the test came back positive. Then they did a more invasive test, a more thorough test, and then it came back positive again. I don't believe that there was some big frat party on Friday night that they all went to celebrate. It is Wisconsin. When put it past them, I would just be very surprised if that's what showed up, especially considering the climate, especially considering all the county ordinances around Dane County with limiting of mass gatherings, indoor and outdoor. The players know how serious this is. And I would be very surprised if Mertz, who has shown he's very confident. I'm not saying he's cocky. He's very confident in himself. He's very passionate about this team. He's always been a team first guy ever since he's gotten here. To do something that would jeopardize himself or his teammates, it doesn't kind of seem like his MO.
Have you had a chance to get a check on Paul Chryst? Because, everybody says these young kids, they can recover. Well, Chryst is no spring chicken. He's not an old coach, but is Chryst showing signs or symptoms? Do we know yet?
Chryst sent out in the statement that announced the postponement or the cancellation of the game that he's feeling fine. He is showing no signs of symptoms. We have not talked to him yet as of you and I recording this. We're slated to talk to him later today. I'm guessing it's going to be the same thing, that he feels fine. But he's knowing Paul, he's going to make this more about the situation, the team situation and the player situation and how to move forward from here and kind of downplay his health. But no, you're right. He's a little bit older than his players. Certainly there's other support staff, coaching staff that have tested positive. So I think the concern will be with them. But Paul has stated that he is feeling fine and he's not showing any symptoms that certainly can pop up and be pretty severe with this disease, this virus.
Long term for the season, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to play 6 games total to qualify to get into the college football playoff. If the Badgers, who have just played Illinois, don't get Purdue, don't get Michigan, if they cancel both of those games and this Nebraska game, then is this season a wash? Would they continue it? Do you have any idea?
I believe that's for the Big Ten. I think in order to be eligible for the Big Ten championship game on December 19th, you have to have played 6 games, or there's an average if other teams in your division have to miss games too. So Wisconsin's got to get to 6 if they hope to be eligible for that Big Ten tournament or that Big Ten championship game. I don't know if the college football playoff has come up with a magical number. One would think it would have to be at least 6. I think by 6 you get somewhat of a decent sample size of what your team is, but I think right now the main focus of this group is to get healthy and get back to playing games.
Well, I mean, if it happens with Ohio State, the team the Big Ten is pushing to get to the college football playoff to really cash in, you probably don't get a team in the college football playoff if they can't get to their conference championship game. So should Wisconsin not qualify, to get to the Big Ten title, or Ohio State or whomever, the Big Ten champ probably isn't going to join Clemson and whoever out of the SEC.
And this whole issue, I mean, people are going to try to blame Wisconsin or stuff like this about why this is happening. Really, your blame should go to the Big Ten. The Big Ten, I thought, was negligent a lot in how they put this season on. I thought they canceled too early. I thought they were too aggressive before that and trying to have this season start the first week of September. I thought they would be better suited, like the SEC did, like the ACC, Big 12 did. Push it back a couple weeks. Make this season start late September, early October, and build in some flexibility into your season. So when cases like this do pop up, you're able to shift some things around. Maybe not schedule an 8-game regular season. Maybe you should have had a bye week in there to kind of, for when instance like this happened, you can rearrange things. You can cancel a crossover game that maybe doesn't mean as much as a division game. So the fact that the Big Ten canceled this season so early and then decided to start late with no flexibility kind of puts them in this pickle. If they just would have kind of pushed off to late September, these cancellations and postponements probably still happen, but then these games probably will be able to get in if you built in a cushion at the end of the season.
What's the reaction from the Nebraska side? Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything yet. I know Nebraska AD is expected to speak later today. I mean, what can you do? What can you say? I'm sure Nebraska's extremely disappointed. They did not play well in their opener against Ohio State. They get to play a home game this weekend. They're probably excited, to get back to playing at home. They know it's a divisional opponent. They have something to prove this year. I mean, Scott Frost in his first 2 seasons has been, this teams have been very underwhelming with a couple of 5 and 7 seasons. They're trying to turn things around in Lincoln. They need to play as many games as possible. I mean, this is probably the reason why Scott Frost, prior to the season, said, we'll play no matter what the Big Ten decides. And 8 Nebraska players sued the Big Ten to play games. They don't want to be sitting on the sidelines, so I'm sure they're disappointed. And Nebraska fans are probably angry at Wisconsin. They're demanding a forfeit. They want to try to get a win against Wisconsin any way possible, but that's the climate that we're in now. I mean, hey, any way to beat Wisconsin, I mean, I guess they'll take a forfeit over a 70-31 drubbing in a conference title game.
Hey, what are the next 2 weeks like for these players? Is everybody tested every day? I mean, I assume Graham Mertz has to take multiple tests, every day, or Coach Chryst. What does the next 2 weeks look like?
Well, we don't know yet. We're going to talk to Barry Alvarez here in a little while. I'm sure he'll be able to shed some light on that. One would assume that if you have tested positive, you're going to be in quarantine, you're going to be in isolation, and you will still get daily testing to kind of see where you're at with the virus. Players who have not tested positive, they still have to be in quarantine because they've had close contact with a lot of these guys. So, I mean, I think the numbers are going to go up. The daily testing has to continue. They have to try to flush this out the best way you can and hopefully get back to playing football next week, obviously with somewhat of a limited roster because you're going to be missing personnel.
Does this feel like Tennessee and the Titans, where it was like every day there was 1 test, 2 tests, they'd push the game back, that one a couple of weeks ago that eventually got moved to, week 7 or 8 of the NFL season?
Yeah, it feels like that. But again, where are you going to move games? You're not going to be able to move games this year because of the impact schedule. So tests are going to continue. The cases are probably going to continue. The goal is, I think, for Wisconsin to get enough of a handle on this outbreak that you can kind of isolate it with contact tracing, with testing, and get the healthy players back on the field and try to prepare to play Purdue at Camp Randall next Saturday. But even now, talking about that with you today, that feels like a long shot too.
I would be remiss if I didn't get out of here without asking you about the rumors of J.J. Watt to the Green Bay Packers. As a lifelong Wisconsin guy, a Badger fan, and a Packer fan, how great would that be for you, your morale this football season as the Badgers? It's all up in the air right now.
I love J.J. J.J. was a blessing to cover during his time here. I mean, his story is great. People know the story of him transferring here. Developing from a tight end to a defensive end, a solid defensive end under Charlie Partridge, the work that he did helping Wisconsin win the Big Ten and get to the Rose Bowl that year. He's been great in the NFL. It's a shame that injuries have kind of robbed him of some of the years of his prime. You feel bad for him as a fellow Wisconsinite to kind of see his talents get wasted away in Houston a little bit. I'm sure he's
You saw his press conference, right? You saw how upset and how just he said, "Oh, that was great."
I saw, he didn't look very happy in Houston. And, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know the status of his contract. I don't know if he's demanded a trade. I'm sure Green Bay, after Teddy Thompson passed on TJ Watt, they would love to get JJ on that defense. Can you imagine Green Bay's defense with a guy like JJ Watt on it, even at like 80%, 85%? That'd be scary to think about.
Well, Ben, thank you so much, man. Happy birthday to your son. I know that today is his birthday. Happy birthday to him. Thank you for coming on. I know it was very short notice. Let's do this. Let's not talk about more canceled games for a while. I don't want to have you back on the podcast for at least 3 or 4 weeks, okay?
All right. I will pencil it in, and I'll then plan for the next pandemic to hit after that.
Take care, Ben.
Take care, Mike.
That is Ben Worgull. Read him at BadgerBlitz.com, on Twitter at The Badger Nation. That is going to do it for this episode of Wickett on Wisconsin. Thanks so much for checking it out. Don't forget, tell a Packer fan, a Badger fan, a Bucks fan, a Brewers fan about it on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, and on, where else are we? Apple Podcasts as well. Until next time, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers, and on Wisconsin. Thanks for listening to Wickett on If you have any feedback or you want to reach out to the show, you can find me on Facebook, Mike Wickett Podcasts, or you can email MikeWickettPodcasts@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter @Mike Wickett. Thanks to Silverman Sound Studios for providing the music for today's show, and you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Until next week, thanks for listening to Wickett on Wisconsin.